Well, hello again, Community Church. This is week 2 of our Bible reading, and today, Tuesday, we have just wrapped up Genesis chapter 15. Now, this might be a strange chapter to some, with we see the animal sacrifices and Abram falling asleep. Remember, it's Abram, it's not Abraham yet. God will change his name, but that hasn't quite happened in our story just yet. But this chapter, to me, is very interesting. And one of the things that really sticks out to me personally, it may not stick out to you, but I want to do a little bit of a teaching here, is we see God interacting with Abram in two different ways. We see a couple of different promises that God gives to Abram. The first is that he asks Abram to go outside and to count the stars. And this is after Abram has just, cried out to God saying, I don't have any offspring. And God says to Abram, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars. Now that's a pretty cool promise if you ask me. And then the second is God's promise to give Abram's descendants the land that is marked out here in the chapter. But in here, we see two different kinds of promises, or what it's called in the Bible are covenants. So there are two different covenants that are given to Abram here in this chapter. And the two different kinds are conditional and unconditional. And just like the name suggests, unconditional means that no matter what, God will uphold that covenant. Despite Abram's actions or any of his descendants' actions, no matter what, God is going to uphold that covenant and promise. And so the promise that God gives Abram to make his descendants as numerous as the stars, that is an unconditional covenant that he makes with Abram. No matter what Abram does from there on out, God's promise is that he will make his descendants numerous. And we see Abram throughout the book of Genesis. He doesn't always follow God's command. I mean, give me a character of the Bible other than Jesus that follows God's command to a T. Only Jesus, no one else. The second covenant that God gives Abram is that of the land that is marked out. And Abram asks God, how shall I know that I possess, or I and my descendants possess this land? And then God asks Abram to perform a sacrificial ceremony of various animals. And I have lots of commentary here, even in my what I call my big red Bible. But basically what this means is this is a conditional covenant. This is the promise of the land, the promised land, to the nation of Israel, what will be the nation of Israel, or Abram's descendants. This is a conditional covenant. It depends upon the obedience of the people of Israel, or Abram's descendants. And so God asks Abram to do something, to sacrifice animals in order to have that promise of the land. And we actually see this continuing on in the story of the Old Testament. And, we remember Moses, the one who led his people out of slavery, which is prophesied here. God said there will be slaves for 400 years. Moses leading his people out and performing many signs and wonders, but Moses disobeys God, and he is held out of the land. He does not get to possess the land that God promised. And so here is the framework, the foundation, the very first time we see this promise that God gives to Abram and what would eventually be the nation of Israel. Abram's descendants become the nation of Israel. And so the covenant to make Abram, or we would later learn, Abraham, a great nation, as numerous as the stars, that's an unconditional covenant. No matter what, God is going to do it. But the promise of the land that the Israelites possess, that's a conditional promise. And it's conditional upon the obedience of Abram's descendants. Every single time the nation of Israel is attacked and sent into exile, leaving the land that they were promised? It's because they disobeyed God. And so right here in Genesis 15, this is the first time that God gives that promise to Abram. And so I hope you learned a little bit about the two different kinds of covenants. Keep reading with us, Community Church. It's good to be in the Bible. And again, I hope you learned something new. I look forward to Sunday where we can discuss more about these texts and scriptures. But continue following along our reading plan. Thank you for joining us online with some digital discipleship. And I would love to have further conversation with you in person. So thanks for watching Community Church. That's a quick 5-minute bit on Genesis chapter 15.